We're joined by one of the most powerful guys in all of Congress, the Republican leader in the House, Kevin McCarthy of Bakersfield. Congressman, welcome back to The Issue Is.
Thank you for having me back. Thank you for having me back.
So let's start with that bill, $500 billion. If I'm at home right now, I'm unemployed, I'm frustrated, what's that going to do for me?
Well, if you're unemployed, this is a good bill for you. If you're a small business owner, if you work for a small business, a business that has 500 employees or fewer, because what this does, it replenishes our program, the Paycheck Protection Program. We've already loaned 1.6 million businesses, saved 30 million jobs, but that was so popular it ran out of money. And so what the program does is it provides money to small businesses to pay their employees. The money that goes to the business, 75% has to be given to the salaries of the employees, pay your rent, pay your utilities, and that becomes a grant, not a loan. We have more than 1 million loans sitting inside the SBA right now. And the unique part about this is 74% of all the loans went to small businesses that have $60,000 or less in payroll. 60% of all these loans went through small banks. The other nice thing about this is an opportunity to save many more jobs along the way. So you may be on unemployment right now because you got laid off from a small business. They could be calling you back with this money. It's a 2-month program. It could help you get through this time period where we could start our state opening back up and get to work again.
I know you said on the floor that Speaker Pelosi and the Congress owes people an apology for creating this situation in the first place. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is when we first created this program, we realized how popular it was, and we had $349 billion in it. And the Treasury came to us and said, we're going to run out of money. So we put forth on April 7th a one-page bill. Doesn't change any policy, just adds more money to the program. The Democrats came into the chambers and objected. If one person objects, it stops. They did that for a number of weeks till the money ran out. And so it ran that nobody could borrow any of the money in the last week. There was more than 700,000 small businesses that had applications in that you said you could not do it because it ran out of money. The Democrats were the only ones objecting, and 4.4 million people yesterday got laid off in the last week. Those are the individuals Congress owes an apology to because they didn't have to be laid off. These small businesses could have been funded. There was no problem behind it. We ended up doing it now. But this becomes a pattern. This becomes a behavior, much like when we passed our first CARES bill, where Speaker Pelosi came in and held that up for a week. The only change in that bill, there was more money for the Kennedy Center or Humanity for the Arts. It didn't change the policy of the bill or what we were doing, and that harmed many people who ended up being laid off because government wasn't doing their job.
You know, the big fight is, of course, what comes next. What do you want to see specifically in the next stimulus bill? What are you looking for?
Well, the first thing I'm looking for is implement the first 4 bills we put through. Remember, we have passed almost $2.8 trillion that are going into the economy. Compounding that with what the Fed is doing, there's about $7 trillion going into the economy. The most important thing, make sure it's working. And that's the critical part, the accountability. Get that part moving. And in this small business program, we were able to do as many loans in 14 days as the Small Business Administration has done in the last 14 years. So this is critical that we look at that. Then take a pause, understand the data where people need more help, and then let's be smart about what we do, almost in a surgical way. If it is needing more help, let's deal with that. When you look at state governments, we have provided $500 billion. Now put that in perspective. We did that in 1 month. We spend roughly a little more than $600 billion an entire year in Medicare. We added another $75 billion to hospitals on the top of the $100 billion we already did. Let's make sure that money gets out, goes to the smart areas, because what we're finding with this COVID, there's pockets that it's hitting harder than others. But the hospitals are still being hurt because we told them they could not do elective services. So when I watched earlier this week, 55%, unfortunately, of the deaths from COVID happened just in New York and New Jersey. But the hospitals across America are hurting because they can't perform any surgery or others. So we need to make sure that they have the resources or the liquidity to continue to keep those people who are on the front line protecting us working. And that's the critical part. Let's make sure that money gets out to the units that actually need it.
And of course, Governor Newsom this week announcing that elective surgeries will be beginning again in California. Let's talk about something that your Republican colleague in the Senate said this week, suggesting that these are blue state bailouts and suggesting that states should be allowed to file for bankruptcy. Do you agree with that?
Look, the thing I look at, we just provided $500 billion to states. The thing that we want to make sure we do here, because these are hardworking taxpayers' money, that states do not utilize this money to pay maybe for pensions or others, but if there's a concern about when it comes to COVID, that they had to shut down or others, that's a place we should look and work together. And I want to thank the way that President Trump and Governor Newsom has been working together. California has really been an example between the federal government and California. From the vice president, from the very beginning, the governor had texted me about his work with the federal government, with the vice president, with the president. Remember, the president has sent out a Navy ship to LA. We are prepared. Now, we are fortunate the actions that California's been taking, that we are not looking like New York. But we have to make sure we're able to maintain that, but be able to open up our economy in a safe manner. And I believe that's an example for other states to how to handle this and how to work with the federal government.
But do you think that this is a blue state bailout, what you guys did yesterday? And do you think that California should be able to declare bankruptcy? Is that what you want to see going forward?
Look, I do not want to see any of these states declare bankruptcy. What I want to see these states able to do is open up in a safe manner, that they work with the federal government. If there is a need and a time based upon the window that COVID was there, we can talk about that, provide resources in that manner. But I would not want to see the states come in and have bases that they have pension problems and others and think hardworking taxpayers are going to bail them out. But if there is a problem when it came to the COVID situation, put accountability around that, and let's put some flexibility. We want to make sure people are staying afloat, that people are being able to move through. Remember, this is not a financial crisis that put us into this mess. This is a virus that came from a distant land that China lied to the rest of the world. Because China lying, if you look at the Southampton study, 95% of this never would have happened. But what we're dealing with now, let's get back to the strong economy we had before, let's protect the health of the American public, and that's what we only should be focused on.
And just to drill it down, would you call this a blue state bailout?
Well, what we did yesterday is not a bailout. Yet what we did yesterday dealt with small business and hospitals, and that was the critical part.
Okay, you mentioned this relationship, this strange bromance between Governor Newsom and President Trump. Who would have ever thought that was happening? One of the many surreal aspects of this. The president says that Governor Newsom is doing a tremendous job. Do you agree with that?
I think he is doing a good job. And that should not be weird. That's how the American public expects us to act and work together. Remember, this COVID virus does not attack one party or the other. It's attacked our entire world. And what I like to see is how the president is acting with our governor and our governor is interacting with our president. What I don't like to see is people criticizing either one of them from a philosophical basis because they're upset that they're working together. That is something very positive and should be celebrated.
Looking back on it, do you wish that the president used different language towards the beginning of this process when he talked about it's just going to wash over, there may not be any deaths or a few people? I mean, do you wish that 2020 hindsight that wasn't the message?
Let's literally walk through what the facts were. If you talk to Dr. Fauci during that time, Dr. Fauci said it would just be the flu. These are the people who are advising the president. The World Health Organization said it would not even transfer from human to human. But at that same time that the president was hearing and getting all this advice, what did he do on January 31st? He shut the flights down from China coming to America against all the other advice. People criticized him. And almost a month later, February 24th, you have Speaker Pelosi telling everybody to gather together in San Francisco and Chinatown. At the time that President Trump shut those flights down, the Democrats moved a rule bill to bring on the floor the no ban that would actually make it harder for the president to do that. Then the president shut down flights from Europe. People criticized him again. So look at his actions. He took actions that went beyond what those experts were telling the president. Why were those experts saying what they were saying? Because China was lying to the rest of the world. China was influencing the World Health Organization. You know, China's What China did to us, the deception that China did, directly led to Americans dying. This is where people should be upset.
So what do you want the U.S. to do?
I'm actually very proud of the action the
China
president did.
as a result of that. I mean, what should be the U.S. response? Because that's quite a thing that you just said.
Well, it's the truth. China was deceptive to the rest of the world. China influenced the World Health Organization to lie about it. China allowed 5 million people from Wuhan to go and fly throughout the world and infect all of us. China, at the same time that they control 50% of the supply chain for the personal protection equipment, the masks, the gowns, and others, when they were telling the world that this wasn't causing any problems, went and purchased more. When France actually sent PPE to China when they're having this problem, what did China do when it infected France? Sold them the products back when France provided it to them. What did China also during that time? For France to be able to purchase more PPE, they tried to influence them to let Huawei into their country. The one thing all of America should wake up to is we should never allow China to control any supply chain again. What Japan is doing, waking up, moving the supply chain out of China. When we wake up and we look at other elements, you look at South Dakota has a problem in a packing facility, then we find out that China actually owns the packing facility. Does that become concern to our food supply? This is something that President Trump, as candidate Trump, warned us about.
It's something he warned us about for decades before he was even candidate Trump. This is something he's been talking about for a long time. A couple quick questions to wrap things up. What's it like being in the Capitol? It is so surreal to see those images of people voting with masks, walking with social distance. What's it feel like being there right now? Well,
it's important to be here. Remember all the different items that we have gone through and the challenges in America. During the war we were here, from the Civil War on. I believe Congress is essential. I sent a letter to Speaker Pelosi this week. What is the plan for opening Congress back up? Just like states, you wouldn't open the entire Congress at once. But there are critical bills that need to be passed. Committees should be here working. We just proved yesterday that you could pass bills with social distancing. You can debate a bill. You can move forward. So there is a reason why Congress should get back to work, so the rest of the nation could get back to work too. We can do it in a safe and healthy manner. There may be some people in Congress that because of their age, because of their health, they can't be here. But that's every single day. Even without COVID, there are certain members of Congress who can't be here. But we should be working, especially when it comes to committees, should be here. And you don't bring all the committees back at once. Bring the critical committees back. Bring Armed Services, going to go for the National Defense Bill. They can meet actually in the chambers, have social distancing, and work on the bill and get it done. You could have transportation working on our WRDA bill for our waterways and others. You could bring up our oversight committee that could be looking at the funding of why World Health Organization was telling the entire world something that was not true. Why they continue to keep somebody who's the first person to head the World Health Organization that is not a physician. Those are the type of things Congress has a responsibility and should be working on right now.
So this idea of proxy voting, which is something we talked about last week with Congressman Schiff, you're not a big fan of that?
No, but let's talk about what proxy voting is. Remember, you'd be changing more than 200-year history of Congress. If you ever do that, that should be in a bipartisan manner. But you and I, we take a census every 10 years to decide the size of what congressional districts should be. They're about even all the way across. Those constituents loan their voice to someone, a congresswoman, a congressman, for 2 years, and they want to hold that person accountable. But they cannot hold the person accountable. You could have Speaker Pelosi holding 200 proxies. So when only she shows up, and it doesn't matter whoever else comes or whatever debate there is, and those constituents can't hold that other person accountable, or their voice is lent to somebody else that just gives it to another person, that is not the way America works, and that's not the way we should work. We have just proven that we passed some of the biggest bills Congress has ever passed in the middle of COVID. We didn't have to use a proxy. We didn't have to change any other process. We actually worked together. What would happen in a proxy, and remember, the power of Congress flips from Republicans to Democrats throughout the process, and it will flip again. But a proxy puts more power with a single individual. That's something we disagree with in America. That's one of the reasons why we created the country in which we did.
Right.
The power rests with the people, not with a single individual.
And just to wrap things up on a fun note, because I always like to have a little bit of fun on this show, in this quarantine life era, I know you're probably working nonstop. A lot of people are home. A lot of people are binge watching certain things. What are you doing? What's quarantine life like with you? And is there something in particular you're watching or really into these days?
Well, you know what? I watch a lot of different documentaries. I went into Bill Gates' brain, was one of them recently. There's some really good items in there if you watch the third one in that series about advanced nuclear. So if you want clean energy and others to come through and have America energy independence, that's an ability there. I did watch Ozark, the third season. I thought that was really good. So yeah, there's a number of things I continue to watch. So if somebody has advice for me, go ahead, pass it on.
All right, very, very nice. And I know last time we talked about the fact that we're both Dodger fans. We're both rooting for baseball to come back. I know I miss sports so much. And we can't wait because Dodgers have such a good team. If only we can get them on the field.
You know what? They won that World Series. They just don't have the trophy.
Exactly. I'll second that. Congressman, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you taking time. And best of luck to you and your family. Stay safe, stay healthy during all of this.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Congressman Kevin McCarthy.